And I think it's time, Jonathan,
Everyone, we made it. We
to the
finally did it.
Zeitgeist talk.
We made it to the Zeitgeist.
So last time we talked about Zeitgeist, we were talking about this graphic, and I actually have a way to throw the graphic up on the screen. So we talked about how, as a culture, we're in the process of transitioning from grimdark to noble dark. And we talked a little bit about noble bright and kind of what's coming in terms of like skating to where the puck is headed. And what we never talked about was grimbright. And so just to, because where we are is noble dark. So grimbright's like the complete other end of the cultural spectrum. So I created a definition of grimbright and noble dark to differentiate them. And Jonathan, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So
Sure.
In grimbright, the outer world is at peace, but the inner world is in turmoil. Whereas in noble dark, the outer world is in turmoil. So the world is broken, but the inner world is at peace.
So I actually reversed those in my head. To me,
So,
the first part of the word, the grimness is within, or the nobility is within. So like in the Lord of the Rings, the world is dark, but the characters are noble.
Right. So it's noble dark. So you have these good, virtuous characters trying to fix a flawed and broken world.
Correct.
Whereas in grimbright, you have broken characters in a good world.
In a good world, yes.
Yeah. So the quintessential grimbright story is Mary Poppins. And this kind of hit me yesterday. My children were watching Mary Poppins, and Mary Poppins is such a fascinating story. And it came out, it was a smash hit because I think it was the very first grimbright story to hit the theaters after the turning point. So the turning point between the first turning and the second turning for Americans was the JFK assassination. People who lived through it, they all know where they were when JFK was assassinated. That was like the moment when the kind of peak, the golden era ended, right? Camelot had come to an end, and it was the beginning of the second turning, which is known as the awakening. And if you so let's walk through the bright elements and the grim elements of Mary Poppins. So the bright elements is that it's a very silly movie. Right. There's an admiral who shoots the cannon that shakes the house.
Love that guy.
The mother character, Mrs. Banks, is a very silly character. The laughing old man is very silly. There's this kind of whimsy and silliness to it. And this is enabled because they live in a very stable, happy world.
Yes.
Right. The children run away from home, and the world is so safe and stable that Mr. Banks isn't even concerned about it. In fact, it doesn't even really register. And then the police find the children, bring them home. The good and just police, right? These aren't corrupt police. These are good and just police that are dutiful and they're doing their job. And Mary Poppins is actually the antagonist fighting against what Mr. Banks wants.
Right.
And what's interesting is that because it's the very beginning of this era, it still ends happy, right? It's still a bright story, right? So it still has the happy ending with Mr. Banks back at work. And the other thing that makes it grimbright is that the stakes are very low, right? The stakes are, will this father have a good relationship with his children? It is not the end of the world.
Well, that is the end of the world to the children.
True.
Which is kind of the POV of the movie.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because the authors need to be reminded, and Hollywood really needs to be reminded, that the world doesn't have to be ending for the stakes to feel high.
Right.
High stakes are relative. And a child doesn't care about what's going on in other parts of the world, doesn't care about railroads through Africa. The child just cares about, will daddy be home for dinner or not?
Yeah.
And so setting the setting is really important. And what was interesting to me as I was learning about storytelling is that in Hollywood storytelling, you have kind of three characters that really matter. You have the protagonist, you have the antagonist, and what's known as the relationship character. So the protagonist is the one who's moving the plot forward, who's making decisions. It's typically the protagonist who goes through the biggest change as a character as they're moving their way through the story. The antagonist is an obstacle to what the protagonist wants. And then the relationship character is the person to whom or from whom the theme or message of the movie or the story is communicated.
Right.
And Bert is the relationship character. And the children are none of those characters. The children are actually not that vital to the core message or story of the film, which kind of broke my mind, because watching it as a child, I absolutely related to the children, and it was like, what's up with all of these adults?
It's
So what?
because
Go ahead.
they are the catalyst. They are why these things change. They're not affecting the change. They're powerless, but they are the catalysts.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the grim elements. So it's very silly, but there's also this deep sadness and melancholy that's throughout the story. So think of the Feed the Bird song, and we're not going to get Disney angry with us. We're not going to sing even a single note. But that is a very, very sad song. The visuals are sad. The key is sad. It's in a very sad minor key. It's very somber and dark. And the brightness of the story is tinged with realism about kind of human flaws and kind of family blind spots, right? The lonely old lady is struggling to feed the starving birds. And the very beginnings of and it's got the very beginnings of unhappiness with the institution. So they're living in this very stable world, but the coming crisis, which is what the third turning, fourth turning is a crisis. The beginnings of that, the very seeds of that, are starting to be sown, which is what you see in the awakening. So feeding the bird. So the big conflict is feeding the birds versus investing in the future. And the film presents feeding the birds as the better choice, right? It's better than investing in the future and advancement of civilization, right? Because the tuppence could be railways through Africa, dams across the Nile, fleets of ocean greyhounds, majestic self-amortizing the canals. Think of the investments and plantations of ripening tea, all from tuppence, prudently, fruitfully, frugally invested in the bank, right? So the dad is inviting Michael, come join me in building this civilization. Come join me in creating greatness. They're inviting Michael to a world of manly sacrifice to build a better tomorrow by sacrificing today and growing your personal fortune at the same time. And Mary Poppins, on the other hand, is inviting Michael to spend his tuppence feeding the birds. And she sings that the saints and apostles smile on those who show they care about the birds. And the big conflict is when Michael rejects his father's offer of manly sacrifice. It brings the great institution of the bank crumbling down, and there's a run on the bank. So let's talk about, so that's the grimness. So now let's talk about the GRIMBRIGHT, because it's connected, right? It's a happy tragedy. So the whole story narratively is a tragedy because Mr. Banks doesn't get anything he wants. So one of the wonderful things about analyzing Zeitgeist, and one of the things I like about musicals for analyzing Zeitgeist, is that musicals feature what's known as an I want song. So usually the first song or one of the first songs in a musical, the protagonist of this musical sings a song about what they want. In fact, the very first song in Epic the Musical is an I want song, and that's brilliant. It's my son, one of my son's very favorite songs. he just wants to listen to that song over and over again. So what does Mr. Bank want? Well, he doesn't want very much, right? He's content in his consistent, orderly life, right? He sings about how pleasant is the life I lead. He wants to be in control of order, and he's brought
I sing this song to my children.
He has brought order to chaos, and he's enjoying that order. And Mary Poppins, the antagonist, wins in the end because Mr. Banks doesn't get any of the things he wants. He doesn't have order. He doesn't have precision. He doesn't have consistency. And instead, he's embraced the inconsistency, chaos, and disorder of his children. So it's about shifting from an external focus of making the world a better place by building railroads through Africa that can enrich many poor and suffering people, and instead having an internal focus towards the domestic life, right? So the story is about a man turning away from external greatness and towards domestic life. It's the kind of turn that's only possible during good times. And that's really key. So now this is where we're connecting it with the zeitgeist. This is only going to resonate during good times. It's when good times are all around us that people get bored, but they also get, they start to realize that their internal world and the internal world could be family, but it could also be like your own psychology is disordered, right? So that's what GRIMBRIGHT is, right? The world is bright, but my life is grim. And this is why Disney or was wise to set this story at the peak of the British Empire and released it at the peak of the American Empire, right? So it took place during the golden age of the British Empire, the very height post the Victorian boom, and it came out in 1963, which was the height of the American cultural supremacy. And so there's a resonance and a rhyming there where Americans in 1963 could really relate to the British in 1903. So because America was experiencing a golden age at that time. Sorry, I was looking over at the chat, glancing at it briefly. So here's the bottom line. This is a story about good times creating weak men. Mr. Banks trades his ambition to walk with giants, which he sings about during his big transition song towards the end of the movie. He's like, I dream of walking with giants, and the cup is shattered, right? He's like, I'm giving up my dreams. My dreams have been taken away from me. He's very sad. He's realizing he's no longer going to be a strong man. He's going to be a weak man. But he's a weak man who has internal fulfillment because he's flying kites with his children. And each one of the turnings is correcting something that went too much of a good thing became a bad thing in the previous turning. So there's this constant kind of repentance and correction as the turnings go round and round. And it's very interesting how the story hits differently, because when the world is broken, we need men who are willing to make sacrifices to build those railroads through Africa, to build the institutions that will fix a broken world. So Mary Poppins is, like I said, quintessentially a GRIMBRIGHT story. And to help explain the turnings, I want to see if we can adapt this GRIMBRIGHT story to a noble dark story. And Jonathan, I want you to compare my adaptation with the reboot, which I have not seen.
I am.
So the reboot came out. I have not seen the reboot, but I want to talk a little bit about how we might tweak Mary Poppins if it were to come out today. And it's going to be worse, because Mary Poppins, the story, is very much a creature of its time. It's not just a GRIMBRIGHT story. It's a very beginning GRIMBRIGHT story. It's about that transition. Like, you almost see the transition in the movie. So the very first song that Mr. Banks sings about how happy I am in the life that I lead, he's rejoicing in the noble, bright time. And at the end of that song, his wife says, the children are missing. Your internal world is disordered. And it's like, that's when the grimness begins. So how would we change this story? Well, one thing, we definitely need to darken the setting, right? I would set it in present day London. There's migrant gangs roaming about the school, beating up fellow students. And the cops are not good and noble, but they're dragging people away to jail for complaining about the gangs online. And there's this ever-present fear of the government, a fear of neighbors, and just this like sense that something is broken, society is not right, we're not safe out there. Mrs. Banks doesn't actually need to change very much. I would keep her as a feminist, but now she's fighting for women's spaces to not be invaded by perverted men. So she's not chanting votes for women, she's chanting lose for women. She sings about her friends who are being arrested for misgendering men who are pretending to be women. So she's still a feminist. I don't think there's much change needs to happen there. Mary Poppins is now a noble, dark angel of discipline. She's still kind, but flint hard. She trains more than she coddles. She drills thrift, first aid, courage, and grit. And as a character, she's practically perfect in every way. So you're not really changing Mary Poppins either, because this is basically still who she was in the original story. Right? She doesn't smile very much. I would age up the children. So I'd make Jane and Michael teenagers so that they can grapple more with the broken world. And I would switch Bert to kind of an underworld fixer who uses his underworld connections for good. So Bert is teaching the children how to defend themselves and others from danger. So instead of going on a magical outing to the countryside, perhaps Bert and the children violently rescue the bird lady from muggers. And then Jane and Mary Poppins are able to use their first aid skills, right? So they're very much kind of actively working to try to fix the broken world, but they're doing it at this kind of small childhood level. But they're learning. Mary Poppins is teaching them not to be victims, right? To be an agent of change, to like go out, change the world, be a light in this dark world, right? They're learning how to be strong men, so to speak. These are the hard times that make strong men. So Mr. Banks, keep him at the bank, but I'd make the bank corrupt. They're profiting off of the migrant crisis, let's say. And Mrs. Mary Poppins helps Mr. Bank repent from profiting off of societal collapse around him. And as he's repenting, he starts ruthlessly working to root out the corruption in the bank. So the restoration of the institution is a really key part of the story. And Mr. Bank must act quickly before he gets pushed out of the bank, right? So there's forces inside of the bank that are pushing against him, that are benefiting from corruption. So Mr. Banks must either rise to power or get fired. So he's working long hours, and it's those long hours that are keeping him away from his children. And his children are also struggling against this violent world, but they're doing it separately, and it's pulling them apart. But they're fighting the same cause, but they're doing it apart. So the key plot change is that when Mr. Banks invites Michael to help him at the bank, Michael, instead of rejecting the invitation, accepts the invitation, because Mary Poppins has helped Michael realize that he can do more good with his dad to build a virtuous institution than he can having street fights with criminals. And so it's this kind of invitation for adventure. Yeah, because one of the elements of the awakening, that second turning, was there was a lot of conflict between the generations. Boomers did not get along well with their parents, generally speaking. That's not the case in a fourth turning. In the fourth turning, people are working together well, right? Right now, there's lots of unity amongst families. Lots of people still live with their parents. They get along well with their parents. There's the sense of we're in this together. The world is broken and we have to band together as a family. So the resolution of the story would show the father and the children working together in the bank to advance the good, the true, and the beautiful. And in the final scene, now that they've purged the corruption from the bank, they're able to fund the railroads through Africa and restore their broken city. And they build a new, beautiful world together as a family. And this ending, you'll notice, kind of rhymes with the ending of Epic the Music, where Odysseus and his son Telemachus are fighting together to rid the palace of the evil suitors, right? It's father and son fighting alongside of each other to make that new, beautiful world that Odysseus has longed for in the whole story. So this is a story about hard times creating strong men and strong families, right? It's not as good of a story, I will say. Because again, Mary Poppins is a GRIMBRIGHT story, but this is how I would tweak it to kind of resonate in the current zeitgeist. And I'm curious, Jonathan, what your thoughts are and what you think, how this compares with what they actually did when they rebooted it. I imagine it's nothing like this.
Yeah, the original Mary Poppins was about wonder, enjoy the world, enjoy feeding the birds, enjoy magic, because Mary Poppins is
Jana says I'm ruining a classic.
Yeah, no, he is. I'm getting there.
yeah no, it's definitely worse, like I said.
But it's fine, because that's what grimdark is. Okay, it's just Mary Poppins doesn't belong in grimdark. Mary Poppins is at her core a transcendent character. She's actually fits into the realm of cosmic horror. She is something from beyond that comes in and changes the world as it is, according to the dictates of the transcendent morality or the cosmic morality, whatever it is. So she comes in floating in an umbrella, right? That's fairly horrifying in most contexts. And then when she takes the kids out, she's teaching them to enjoy the world. And who do they go with? Well, they go to the street sweeper, or the chimney sweep, right? And the chimney sweeps are all silly. And they're having a great time and they're dancing. It's a great song. My kids love that song. They love that dance.
And now in reality, they're all dying of black lungs.
Exactly. But they're having fun while they're doing it. And the idea is more that they're having fun, which is a part of being a kid. Yeah. Is the world good if you're not having fun? You can't tell me about railroads and the greyhounds of the ocean if we can't enjoy the world that we're in. The father doesn't come and enjoy his children. He's always at work. And when he comes back, he expects to have them washed, and they give him a peck on the cheek, and then they go straight up to bed.
Yeah.
And that's not a father enjoying his children. There's like no reason to have a family at that point other than maintenance of the status quo. So that's the great evil that's shown in Mary Poppins is you're not enjoying life, which is a problem in a good time. And Thomas is absolutely right about that. If you live in a good time at the peak of the British Empire or the American Empire and you're not enjoying it, what is wrong with you? And so something comes down to tell you, hey, a little chaos is fine as long as you are enjoying the good time that you are in.
Yeah.
The
Jana
reboot.
Sorry,
Okay,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
let me jump in. Jana says it would be a good story. It's just not Mary Poppins. And I think this is really profound because the story that you're telling really has to be connected to the time in which you're telling it in terms of where the zeitgeist is.
Yes.
And when you adapt a story to a different zeitgeist, you are making a different story. And I think this is why people are so frustrated with Hollywood right now, because Hollywood doesn't know how to tell a story for the current zeitgeist. And instead, they keep telling stories from previous zeitgeists, but with like better computer
trying
graphics.
to fit it.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit.
And they're trying to ram it in.
Yeah.
And it's just very frustrating. People are wanting epic musical.
And
they're not
I'm getting there.
Yeah, okay.
I'm getting there. So in my analysis here, I will get to, why grim darkening Mary Poppins is a mistake. So in the reboot was weak. Okay. Because it did not fulfill the mission of the first Mary Poppins. Great. She comes back, but what is she doing? There's like some silliness. She seems harder. Now, I really like Emily Blunt. I think Emily Blunt is great. And I thought she did a good job, but her character was harder. Just inflexible. Able to handle silliness, but she didn't enjoy the silliness. She resisted it. It did not change her when she encountered it. She wasn't interacting with it. She was more inert to it, but the children should experience the silliness. So I did not enjoy the reboot. And I'm not a musical guy, but I can enjoy Mary Poppins with my kids because my kids are enjoying it. So I can get the value that they're getting out of it. They don't enjoy Mary Poppins Returns. They don't like that reboot. Now let's talk about Thomas's.
Hold on real quick. I want to do one more housekeeping thing. This graph that we've had on the screen for the last 20 minutes is from Neil Shenvi on Twitter. I don't know if he made it, but he's the one who shared it, who I first saw it. So this graph is not original to me, although these 4 turnings we did do an episode on way before he did this graphic. So he may have done the graphic based off of our episode. I'm not sure.
Talking about Thomas's retelling here, can you grim darken Mary Poppins? And I don't think that you can, because the mission that she was sent to do was to help humans experience wonder again, and that's not a grim dark problem. You don't need to learn how to enjoy things when the world is terrible. What the hero needs to be in a grim dark story is a destroyer. He has to be strong. He or
destroying
she
evil, so
has to be capable of destroying the evil.
And I will actually, that's one difference I would say between grimdark and noble dark. Grimdark is about destroying evil. Noble dark is about building the good, I would say. So kind of like in the rubble of the evil, you're building something new and good.
Yes.
Moving into Noble Bright, perhaps.
Right.
Because eventually people get tired of that dystopian destroy evil, and they're like, build the good, found Camelot, right? We don't just want to hear about
Noble Dark is the good is under attack. Gondor is under siege and it's about to fall. The tree is fading. The Ents are losing the forests.
I think Noble Dark is the good is on attack.
No, absolutely not. No,
Aragorn is leading the armies of Gondor to the gates of Mount Doom.
That's the end. That's the last battle, and they lost. The only reason that they won the battle was because Frodo got the ring in. That whole attack was a distraction. I think Noble Dark is the good is under siege and it's losing, and we're looking for a hero who will make the good not lose. Grim Dark is there's no good. We need someone because it can't. It's oppressed. It's repressed. It's shoved down. And we need a hero who can crack the evil so that good can grow again. Noble Bright, like Narnia, for instance, is that there is good, and it is so good. And it is so good that even the innocence of children can help it to grow. Children can become the kings and queens of the mystical and magical land, as long as the witch that's suppressing everything can be removed or destroyed. But they don't destroy her. Aslan does.
Right.
So who does what action is what determines what turning you are in. GRIMBRIGHT, it's a good world, but we're not enjoying it for some reason, and we need to learn how to enjoy it. We're broken inside, we're grim inside. And I brought this up to you before, we'll talk about it here. Christopher Robin, the remake with Ewan McGregor. And not remake, but you know what I'm saying. Ewan McGregor is now Christopher Robin older, and he has a career and everything, and Pooh comes back. And he's talking to his old stuffed animal companions again, and you are really finding out he's not happy, even though he should be. And the stuffed animals are more concerned with the fact that Christopher Robin isn't happy. Why aren't you happy, man? And they're trying to fix that problem. And so that whole movie actually wound up doing a really good job, because it's not Winnie the Pooh. It does not fulfill the same mission. It doesn't have the same message. It is about Winnie the Pooh seeing his kid years in the future and trying to fix a different problem.
And I think what the problem is that we're facing is kind of the quintessential question of Zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
Because in solving that problem, you create a new problem that the next era of the turning has to fix, and the wheel turns on, and there's nothing new under the sun, and now we're back to Solomon. Xavier is saying, Jonathan, how could we get you to write a military science fiction story with Mary Poppins as the main character?
So I kind of already did this. So the first one I ever wrote was called The Exorcism of Frosty the Snowman. That's actually my first published work. Okay. Frosty the Snowman, the movie, is a very silly movie about, a transcendent character. Frosty comes from somewhere else, and we don't know where.
I think you're shades of black. Mary Poppins is the evil villain guy.
Yeah, potentially. I haven't.
He's
put
totally.
any thought into that.
I'm blanking on his name, but he's totally a Mary
Ashkelon.
Poppins.
Yeah,
Ashkelon is an angel of discipline,
but
an evil angel.
The point is that's grim dark, though, and he's creating a good thing to break the grip of evil. Because good isn't strong enough, and that's his problem. Now, in Exorcism of Frosty, the reason it works is because of who I wrote it for. I wrote it for Marines who were having a hard time. It was Christmas time. They were deployed in Iraq. Suicides are through the roof around winter. But what they got to see was something. They got to see problems in that, because they don't live in a good world. Marines don't live in a good world. We suffer, and it's unnecessary. Like, why? Why does it hurt so much? But I was able to create a dark time where Frosty was more of a cosmic dark character that came from another place. And this time it was about a hero who could destroy the dark, but it was kind of funny because it was twisting everything that they understood from before. And when you try to tell a bright story to dark people, it feels like gaslighting. It's like, why aren't you happy?
It feels fake.
What's wrong with you? Why aren't you happy? Things are good. And it's like, no, it's not, man. You can't. What's interesting hear is my soul howling inside because of how broken I feel all the time. And you're trying to tell me to be happy? Smile more? You can't say that to people who are suffering like that. So Frosty the Snowman doesn't work for Marines who miss their families at Christmas time. But the Exorcism of Frosty does, where the message is be strong and overcome this overwhelming evil that seems like it's in front of you so that you can make it to the light.
Yeah, we'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I know a lot of you are watching the replay. So I don't want you to hear this as like me trying to fix Mary Poppins.
Oh, no.
Mary Poppins isn't broken. Mary Poppins is a classic, and classics transcend Zeitgeist. And so because it's such a masterpiece, the original, people still enjoy watching it. And it is fun. One of the nice things about fiction is that you can visit other elements of the Zeitgeist, other parts of the turning, and kind of learn the lessons that season had to teach society and individuals. And those lessons are still good lessons, right? Like even when times are hard, fathers should still spend time with their children, right? It's not like, oh, the only time in society that fathers should spend time with their children is when it's good out. But if you're writing a story that you're wanting to sell well right now, because one of the things that can happen sometimes is you have to match the zeitgeist. Because one of the things that can happen sometimes is that you write a story out of time, where it's a story for a zeitgeist that's yet to come, and you may not experience the success in your lifetime. This doesn't happen in most books. Most books, if they don't match the zeitgeist, the current zeitgeist, they just get forgotten. But occasionally you'll have a book that will pop long after it was originally written, because it was written for an era that had already come and was yet to come, but wasn't now, right? Because the wheel turns ever onward. I think the problem with mentioning Mary Poppins is that people have been singing lyrics in the chat this whole time. So anyway, I hope you enjoy Mary Poppins. I hope you enjoy this conversation about Zeitgeist. And the one thing I guess I'll close on, and Jonathan, I'll hear your final thoughts, is remember your Timothy, because while society moves through this kind of collectively, we don't all move through it at the same pace, right? Some people are on the bleeding edge and they're almost already into noble bright, and some people are still on the trailing edge and they're still very much in grim dark. And where to place your story targeting your specific audience will affect decisions that you're making. It's like Jonathan, his target audience of Marines, they extend grim dark as much as possible, right? They're the very first in to grim dark and the very last out of grim dark.
We feel kind of useless after grim dark, to be honest.
Like if the world is at peace and everyone is happy, Marines are just kind of looking around. Like,
what do I do now?
What do you need me for?
Yeah.
I'm here when you need to break things. I'm not very useful if everything is right and good. And it's interesting. I was reading Arthur. There's a King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table by, I think his last name is Green. He's one of the Inklings. It's a really good book. And at one point, Arthur and his knights have like cleaned the kingdom of all of the bandits and the brigands and the monsters and the Saxons, and there's peace. And it's like a light shines on the round table, and it's like, this is the peak. And it's at that point that things internally start going bad, in a sense, where they start seeking the grail, and that causes them to look inward and start dealing with their own sins, and things start kind of falling apart. It's when Lancelot starts cheating with Guinevere. It's very interesting, and where you kind of see that it's actually like a moment, like the light shines, the round table is illuminated, and it's like, and the wheel clicks into the next era. And sometimes the transition from one era to another is really slow. It's kind of like falling asleep, where you don't really realize that it's happening until it's already happened. And other times it's like getting knocked unconscious, where there's like a pivotal moment. The president has been shot and the world is now different. I don't understand why or how, but there was the time before Kennedy was shot, and there's the time after Kennedy was shot, and or the time before the war and the time after the war. I was reading a quote from Mark Twain about the Civil War, and talking about how differently people in the North and the South remembered the war.
Yeah.
So for people in the North, by the 1880s, 1890s, the war was something that almost never came up in conversation. They didn't think about it very much because it didn't impact their lives very much. Whereas in the South, people talked about the war all the time because of how disruptive getting conquered was, and how their whole life had shifted and changed. And so if you're right, and so as an author, he's like writing for these two audiences, right? Because he kind of had a foot in both cultures. He was able to write a really compelling Yankee protagonist in Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and he was also able to write really compelling Southern characters in Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. And he was realizing these audiences are in different points. Like, as we weren't one people the way we were in the 1950s. We were very much two different peoples, and culturally what was resonating was very different. And potentially his writings kind of helped unify the country. Potentially be interesting to investigate. But anyway, we have gone on very long. Jonathan, do you have any final thoughts before we call it a day?
If you're going to serve the people that you're writing for, I really recommend, whether you're Christian or not, look at what Jesus did. Jesus looked on the multitudes and had compassion. He didn't have compassion first. He spent time with them. He looked at them. He saw them. He observed them. He experienced what they were going through, and he had compassion. And that's when he turned to his disciples and said, fix it. Your whole mission is to fix this. So you need to look and see what your audience needs. Like, I know what my Marines need. Okay. We are people out of time. Okay. We go to deployment, we deploy to Iraq, and we experience the worst things in the world. And then we come back and we're people out of time. We don't experience what normal American civilians experience when we come home, which is why there seems like there's such a disconnect between what seem like are now two people. And we're working really hard to try to get back so that we can enjoy life again. But like, if you watch the movie American Sniper, he's incapable of ever coming back because the evil still needs to be destroyed. Chris Kyle suffered because he couldn't destroy enough of the evil, and it just offended his spirit that it still existed because of the horrible things that he was forced to observe, and he couldn't fix it fast enough. And he felt like he had deaths on his conscience of the people he couldn't save, the evil he couldn't destroy fast enough. And that is something it's very difficult to understand about heroes, is sometimes it's not about... This is something I need to explore with Superman, is who he can't save, who he can't save fast enough. That would be a great thing for them to explore with Superman. The things he has to do. I thought End of Man of Steel was great, where he has to save those people and does something he would not normally do. He breaks Zod's neck to save people.
Breaking his own code in the process.
Exactly. And that's powerful because people ignored that. They just didn't like it because, oh, Superman wouldn't do that. Well, go to The Mandalorian, season 2, where he takes off his helmet so he can log into the system to find out where Baby Yoda is. And then he has to confess to it, to like the priestess of his people later on. Have you taken off your helmet? Yes. And they cast him out because of it. And he has to earn his place back into his tribe because he violated his own code to save his family, to save someone. And it's so powerful. Everyone loves that. And I don't think people are verbalizing what that is. What are heroes suffering to do the right thing, to destroy the evil so that good can live again? So that's who I'm writing. That's why I'm so passionate about it, is that's who I write for. That's what I work in. Whatever you are working in, whatever your people are, and not everyone's audiences are going through the same thing. Okay, if you're writing for women in the UK right now, it's grimdark.
It's also a reminder of how important what you're doing is as an author, because whatever story you're writing and whoever you're writing it for, you're giving them a narrative framework to help better understand and interpret and make sense of this complicated, broken world that we're living in.
Yeah.
And so love your book, love your reader, write a better book.